So here we are again, looking at the idea here that salvation is by faith, not by works, such that no one can boast. So we're looking at this biblical concept that we are saved by faith, and saved by faith in Christ, that it's a free gift, not by our own works, such that we can boast. Now, one of the things we see in this is that a lot of times what happens is that some people, they take this sort of idea and they say, well, I mean, if we're saved by faith and not by works, then they think, well, we can sin as much as we want and it's going to be okay. The problem we get into with this is that when people make those kind of assumptions, that may not be the right faith. In fact, it's not the right faith. It's not a saving faith necessarily to think that way. And it is very bad because Christ didn't die on the cross and for us to just keep sinning and sinning without any regard for his crucifixion. I know one of the more popular formulas that I believe is most sensible and I would trust in is this idea that we are not saved from our works, but through our works. That just like with Noah, for example, Noah built the ark, and so he had to have faith, and he and several others worked and built that ark, and then in so doing, what it did there is it caused a situation to occur where through their faith the ark was built and they were saved through it. They were saved through getting on board and being able to weather the storm, as it were. Now, what would have happened if instead of building the ark, what would have happened if Noah got the message that they were just saved by grace and that they could sin as much as they wanted to, and God told them, well, you need to build an ark, and they said, well, we could just sin as much as we want. And so they never built that ark. And then the storm came and they all drowned. I mean, would they still be saved by faith? Well, that's where we have to look and say, is this the right faith? And sadly, that would be a problem if that had happened. But it didn't. Noah had the right faith, built the ark, and people were saved. Now, when we look at this, it's not really the works of Noah per se that saved the people, because what what if, for example, Noah just decided to build an ark and God had never said, hey, you need to build an ark, and so it was never by faith. It's just that he one day had this idea that building an ark was a good and godly thing, and that, or let's say that you have some idea that, well, you know, that was the faith of Noah, and we're just going to continue on and that faith and start building arks and be saved. Well, you know, and the rain never comes, and everybody looks at that and they laugh, and they say, you know what, those people are kind of squirrely. They built these arks and nobody ever gets saved. You know, it works toward their condemnation, maybe. Hopefully not. You know, hopefully not. And so we don't want to be in a situation where we're believing in something false and building some kind of giant arks and that sort of thing, and when it's not really necessary. You know, I know that when I look at the world today, and I think about Noah's Ark there, I can see how there are a lot of things that we can be doing, maybe, and they can be sort of like Noah's Ark there, and you know, where we put forth the investment, and you know, we have a nice church building or something, and then people are saved, you know, through it, not necessarily by it, but through it, and it's nice. It's nice to be able to have some ability to basically take faith and combine it with action and be saved through it. I mean, one of the things that we see here is that it's easy to look at the world today and see what's wrong. But sometimes it's hard to make a contribution to actually have something that is right in a world that's gone astray. You know, to actually be able to do better. Maybe it's not hard, but be able to have some sort of ark, as it were, weathers the storm. I know that when we look at this, one of the things that is easy to understand, and I believe is very simple, is that the ark is sort of like a type of Christ, as it were. So one of the things that teaches us is that when the ark is built, that the people get on that are going to be saved, and it's as though they're entering Christ. You know, the people that are saved are those that are in Christ, you know, that go into the ark. And so, you know, when you go into Christ, then you weather the storm. And that's where the sacraments, the special means of grace, give the ability to weather the storm. I mean, what happens there is that people, they basically partake of the sacraments, and then the flood waters, the so-called flood waters, come and wash away the wicked, as it were, sort of like Pharaoh's army was washed away in the Exodus and the part of the Red Sea. And then those that are in the covenant community, those that have partaken of the sacraments, they're sort of like the Israelites that, and we're sort of like the Israelites that, come up on dry ground from the Red Sea, or that come out of the ark, unscathed as it were, come out of the ark and are saved. Now, what we see here in these sorts of discussions and these sorts of topics is that the sacraments there give the grace, and through those sacraments, those special means of grace, that's what saves the people. But to have the sacraments, people have to be in faith. They have to have faith, because without the faith, it's hard for there to even be any sacraments. And without the faith, it's hard for there to be an ark for which the people can be saved. That's one of the ways that we can talk about the subject here of salvation. This whole idea of being saved by grace, not by works, so that no one can boast. One of the things that we get into is that somebody could claim that Noah, that by having an ark, he has something to boast about, that he and several others, they built this huge structure and they got something to really boast about, that's what really saved them. Some people would claim. But again, the problem here is that that's not exactly true, because it doesn't make any sense to build an ark like that without faith. There's no reason to just one day build an ark unless there's some sort of revelation from God, unless there's some kind of faith that says that something bad is going to happen, that God is making it clear that it is necessary to have some kind of giant ark. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that we see a lot, I've gone to school a long time, 20 years. One of the things that we see a lot here is that it's real easy to get into a situation where we might build something and wonder, is this going to really pan out? We might make an investment and wonder, is this going to do what we hope it will do? And I'll tell you, sometimes we can't always fully know the future and what's going to happen, and sometimes we do make bad investments. Now, one of the things that we look at here, and and see is that salvation is a lot more than just making investments and having investments pay off. That's really more of a temporal, more of a, I don't want to say a worldly way of looking at salvation. And, you know, it's a lot more than that. I don't know if you can see the birds in the distance there across the river, but there's the island again. But it's a lot more than that. I've gone to school, like I say, for 20 years, and you know, I know that when I look at these things, I have to kind of wonder how everything's going to go. Now, one of the things that I like to think about here with this topic is that it's sort of like the sower and the seed, you know, and there's always the phrase that what you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, the more that you sow, ideally the more that you reap. And God gives the increase and rewards the effort. So, you know, if you don't make an effort, then God doesn't always have much to go on. But if you can't make an effort, then, I mean, that's where everything becomes pure grace. I know with the widow's mite, for example, you know, the widow has the half cent and contributes that, and she gives her all, and so Christ, he points out to that as being more of a sacrifice, more giving than those that gave of their wealth. And so there's times when we look at that and we look at the idea of being saved by faith, and we have to see that and know that it doesn't matter if we're a strong man like Noah or a weak man like David. You know, if we're a weak man like David, we can maybe slay Goliath with a few small smooth stones, because God rewards the faith and the effort. I shouldn't say rewards the faith, but he gives the faith, and then he basically rewards the effort. So that effort comes through faith. Being able to slay the giant with 3 smooth stones, that's where it's a matter of a little bit of work, but a whole lot of faith. And when we look at it, I mean, nobody's going to necessarily boast, ideally, that they slayed a giant with 3 small stones. They're not going to boast in their own strength. I mean, some people might say, oh, that guy was really smart. You know, he slayed the giant with 3 small stones. And so there might be a boast in the intelligence there. this is somebody that is really wise. But when we look at it, the whole story was really about faith and not how smart King David was. It was about faith. And so to think that it was all about intelligence, it misses the point of the story. And that's how our story should be. That we shouldn't be looking to boast in how smart we are, but instead, if we're to boast, we should be boasting in the Lord. And that's where the faith comes into play. Now, I'm going to see if I can do something here. I'm going to try to zoom in. So this is the first time in one of my videos that I've done some zooming. You can see the birds, just barely maybe. And I can see them in the water there. You should be able to see them a little bit. But I'll tell you what I hope there is that you are able to get some sort of value from these videos. And maybe they provide some sort of insight that you can use that helps develop you, maybe see what faith is about, works, faith, and the place of those things, and be able to go from point A to point B in your life. That this would help out whatever point A might be, maybe a bad place, point B, maybe a lot better place. Better place meaning a place of rest in the Lord. Just following the birds there, a place where you're able to be